Picture this: you're sitting at your desk, staring at an overflowing inbox, while your boss sends yet another last-minute request. Your heart races, your patience thins, and suddenly, you're one email away from snapping. Or maybe it's a tense conversation with a loved one, where every word feels like a spark threatening to ignite an argument. These moments test us, don't they? They reveal just how fragile our emotional balance can be when life piles on the pressure. But what if you could navigate these storms with unshakable calm? What if, instead of reacting impulsively, you could choose how to feel, respond, and ultimately reclaim control over your inner world? That's the power of emotional autonomy, the ability to master your emotions rather than letting them master you. And it's not some modern self-help buzzword. This wisdom has been tested for centuries, forged in the fires of ancient philosophy, particularly Stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Those words cut straight to the heart of what we're exploring today. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life's challenges don't exist. It's about recognizing what's within your control and what isn't, then directing your energy wisely. Think of it as an emotional toolkit filled with timeless principles that help you stay grounded when chaos strikes. Whether it's workplace stress, personal conflicts, or the relentless noise of modern life, these lessons teach you how to respond with clarity, not react with chaos. In this video, we're diving deep into 22 Stoic lessons for nurturing emotional autonomy, practical, actionable wisdom you can start applying today. We'll explore how to reframe setbacks, cultivate resilience, and detach from the opinions of others. You'll learn how to spot the difference between what you can change and what you must accept, and most importantly, how to find peace in the midst of life's inevitable storms. This isn't just philosophy, it's a lifeline for anyone tired of feeling tossed around by their emotions. So if you're ready to build unshakable inner strength, let's begin this journey together. The path to emotional freedom starts here. The first lesson in mastering emotional autonomy begins with a simple but profound idea: the dichotomy of control. This cornerstone of Stoic philosophy teaches us to separate life into two categories: what we can influence and what we can't. Epictetus, the former slave-turned-philosopher, put it best: some things are within our power while others are not. At first glance, that might sound obvious, but how often do we waste energy raging against things entirely outside our command? Think about the last time you were stuck in traffic. Your hands grip the wheel, your frustration builds, but honking louder won't magically clear the road. The traffic jam isn't yours to control. What is yours? Your breath, your focus, whether you let the delay ruin your mood or use it to listen to an audiobook or reflect on your day. That shift in perspective is where emotional autonomy takes root. Now apply this to bigger challenges. A coworker takes credit for your idea. A friend cancels plans last minute. The weather ruins an outdoor event, the common thread. You can't control other people's actions or unforeseen circumstances, but you can control how you interpret them and how you respond. This isn't about passive resignation, it's about directing your effort where it actually matters. Imagine holding a lantern in a dark room. You wouldn't waste time trying to illuminate the entire space at once. Instead, you'd focus on lighting the path directly in front of you. That's the power of the dichotomy of control. It teaches you to shine your energy on the actionable, not the unchangeable. Here's a practical exercise to cement this lesson. Grab a sheet of paper and draw two columns. Label one within my control and the other outside my control. Start filling them in. Your commute time. Outside, how you prepare for it, leaving earlier, choosing a scenic route. Inside, a family member's criticism. Outside, whether you internalize it or respond with curiosity. Inside, this list isn't just an exercise, it's a mirror revealing where you've been misplacing your emotional energy. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, but to stop fighting battles you were never meant to win. When you stop conflating the uncontrollable with the unacceptable, you reclaim something precious, the freedom to choose your focus, your effort, and ultimately your peace. What if every setback, every obstacle, every so-called bad day wasn't just something to endure but something to embrace? That's the radical idea at the heart of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. The Stoics didn't just preach acceptance of life's hardships, they urged us to welcome them not as burdens but as teachers. Nietzsche, though not a Stoic himself, captured this perfectly when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Imagine looking at the worst day of your life and saying, "This too is part of my story and I wouldn't erase it." That's the mindset shift that transforms victims into victors. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who faced exile, chronic illness, and eventual execution by Emperor Nero, wrote, "Fate leads the willing and drags along the reluctant." He wasn't just theorizing, he lived it. When exiled to Corsica, a place considered barren and bleak, he didn't wallow. Instead, he turned it into a period of prolific writing and self-discovery. He chose to see exile not as punishment but as an opportunity to strip away distractions and focus on what truly mattered. And then there's Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during a devastating plague, losing countless citizens and possibly even his own children to the disease. Yet his journals reveal no rage against fate, only a steadfast commitment to lead with virtue amid the chaos. These weren't passive men, they were warriors who weaponized adversity. So how do we practice Amor Fati in everyday life? Start by reframing a recent challenge. Maybe you missed a promotion or a project fell apart. Ask yourself, what is this situation trying to teach me? Perhaps the failure spared you from a role that wouldn't have fulfilled you, or the broken plan forced you to innovate in ways you'd never considered. The Stoics called this the art of turning obstacles into fuel. Think of a blacksmith tempering steel. Fire makes it brittle, but proper hammering makes it unbreakable. Adversity works the same way on our character. Every disappointment, every detour is a chance to forge resilience. Here's a challenge for you. Pick one frustration from this week, a delayed flight, a harsh critique, a missed opportunity, and write down 3 ways it might secretly be serving you. Maybe the delay gave you time to reflect, the critique highlighted a blind spot, or the missed opportunity redirected you to something better. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's about recognizing that even the sharpest stones in our path can be stepping stones if we choose to see them that way. Amor Fati isn't just philosophy, it's a daily practice of finding the gold hidden in the grit. When you stop resisting life's twists and start learning from them, you don't just survive storms, you learn to dance in the rain. Ever find yourself spiraling into anxiety over a problem that, in hindsight, seems trivial? That's where the Stoics' most powerful mental exercise comes in, the view from above. Picture yourself rising high above the earth, watching your life unfold like a scene in a documentary. The deadlines, the arguments, the petty grievances, they all shrink into insignificance against the vastness of the cosmos. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "Think of the universal substance, of which you have a very small portion, and of universal time, of which a short and indivisible interval has been assigned to you." He wasn't just being poetic, he was training his mind to see beyond the noise. Centuries later, astronauts would experience something eerily similar, the overview effect. When they looked back at Earth from space, national borders vanished, conflict seemed absurd, and their personal worries dissolved into awe. One astronaut described it as seeing the world without division, like a glowing blue marble hanging in the darkness. The Stoics didn't need rockets to achieve this perspective. They cultivated it through imagination, using it as an antidote to emotional tunnel vision. Imagine applying this to your own life. That stressful meeting from space, it's just a blip in time, a rude comment, a speck in the grand scheme. This exercise doesn't trivialize your struggles, it liberates you from their weight. Next time overwhelm strikes, try this. Close your eyes and mentally zoom out. See your city from the clouds, then the continent, then the planet itself. Notice how small your worry appears against the backdrop of history, nature, and the infinite universe. Marcus Aurelius called this placing your troubles in the light of the whole. It's not about dismissing your feelings, but realizing you're part of something far larger. Here's a challenge. Pick one current stressor, a financial fear, a strained relationship, a work mistake, and view it from above. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? How would someone from another century see it? Often, what feels like a crisis is just a shadow cast by our own narrow focus. The Stoics knew this, and now you do too. Perspective isn't just a tool, it's the ultimate emotional leveler. There's a powerful paradox in Stoicism. By imagining the worst-case scenario, you actually strip it of its power to shock you. This practice is called Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, and it's like a fire drill for your emotions. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who weathered political storms and personal tragedies, wrote extensively about this. He advised his friend Lucilius to rehearse in your mind exile, torture, war, shipwreck, not to dwell in fear, but to disarm fear itself. Think of it as emotional vaccination, exposing yourself to small doses of adversity to build immunity against life's larger blows. Take a modern example, an upcoming difficult conversation with your boss. Maybe you've been avoiding it, letting the dread grow like a shadow. Premeditatio Malorum flips the script. Instead of hiding from the discomfort, you lean into it. Imagine the worst. Your boss dismisses your concerns or the talk escalates into conflict. Now ask yourself, could I handle that? You'd likely realize, yes, you could. Maybe it would sting, but you'd survive, adapt, even learn from it. By facing the possibility head-on, you drain it of its terror. This isn't pessimism, it's preparedness. Seneca took this further. He suggested we mentally lose everything, our wealth, our status, even our loved ones, not to invite sorrow, but to appreciate what we have while recognizing its fragility. In one letter, he wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. Picture a sailor checking the weather before setting sail. The storm might still come, but he's not caught off guard. He's adjusted the sails, plotted alternate routes, and packed emergency supplies. That's the Stoic approach. Hope for the best, but fortify yourself for the worst." So here's your challenge. Identify one thing you've been avoiding, a hard decision, a vulnerable conversation, a financial risk. Spend 5 minutes mentally walking through the worst possible outcome. Then ask, what would I do next? You'll likely find the monster under the bed was just a shadow. The Stoics didn't practice this to suffer, they did it to uncover their own strength. When you stop fearing the fall, you gain the freedom to walk taller. And that's the secret. Peace isn't the absence of storms, it's the certainty that you can weather them. There's a reason some of history's most resilient minds, emperors, generals, even slaves turned philosophers, kept journals. It wasn't for posterity, it was for survival. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the Roman Empire at its peak, wrote what we now call meditations, not as a book, but as private notes to himself. Lines like, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." B1 weren't meant for applause, they were battle cries scribbled in the quiet hours, a way to steady his mind amid the chaos of power. That's the essence of Stoic journaling, not just recording your day, but fortifying your soul. Modern gratitude journals have their place, but Stoic journaling digs deeper. While gratitude lists focus on appreciation, I'm thankful for my health, my job, Stoic prompts confront the raw edges of life. What fear did I let control me today? Where did I confuse what's happening with what it means? Epictetus nailed this when he said, "First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do." Journaling was his way of holding up a mirror to his impulses, separating rational thoughts from knee-jerk reactions. Imagine having a nightly dialogue with your wisest self, calling out your own excuses and course-correcting in real time. Here are 3 prompts stolen straight from the Stoics' playbook. First, what's one thing I tried to control today that wasn't mine to control? Maybe you obsessed over a stranger's rude comment or panicked about a deadline you couldn't move. Writing it down exposes the wasted energy. Second, what virtue did I neglect under pressure? Did patience vanish in traffic? Did courage waver during a tough conversation? The goal isn't self-flagellation, it's awareness. Third, and most powerful, how could I have turned today's biggest frustration into fuel? Maybe the missed train became time to read, or the argument revealed a boundary you need to set. Start small, just 5 minutes before bed. No fancy leather notebooks required. A crumpled napkin works if that's all you have. The magic isn't in the format, it's in the friction. Wrestling your thoughts onto paper forces clarity. Think of it as emotional archaeology. Each night, you're brushing away the dirt to find the artifacts of your better self. Marcus didn't write to impress, he wrote to remember, and that's the key. Your journal isn't a diary, it's a drill sergeant whispering, "You knew this truth yesterday. Why did you forget it today?" We've all felt that itch: the newest phone, the trendier wardrobe, the bigger house, as if acquiring more could somehow quiet the restlessness inside. But what if the key to contentment isn't about getting more, but wanting less? That's the heart of the Stoic discipline of desire, a practice Epictetus called the first and most necessary skill for freedom. He divided desires into 2 categories: natural basic needs like food, shelter, purpose, and unnatural, the endless chase for status, luxury, or applause. The unnatural ones, he warned, are like drinking salt water. The more you indulge them, the thirstier you become. Take Diogenes, the cynic philosopher who lived in a barrel and owned nothing but a wooden bowl. When he saw a child drinking from his hands, he smashed the bowl, realizing even that was excess. Alexander the Great, intrigued by Diogenes' simplicity, visited him and offered any favor. Diogenes famously replied, "Step out of my sunlight." Here was the most powerful man on earth, envying someone who wanted nothing. The lesson: desire isn't about the objects, it's about the stories we attach to them. That promotion won't make you feel worthy if you don't already believe you are. Modern life magnifies this struggle. Social media turns wants into needs by convincing us everyone else has more vacations, more gadgets, more perfect relationships. But the Stoics saw through this illusion 2,000 years ago. Seneca mocked those who toil to keep up with the Joneses, writing, "It's not that we have little, it's that we crave so much." The antidote: want management, not deprivation, but conscious curation of your desires. Here's how to start. Pick one thing you've been yearning for: a luxury car, a viral post, a title at work, and ask, is this desire natural or manufactured? Would achieving it truly change how I feel, or just reset the bar higher? Epictetus advised, freedom isn't secured by filling your pockets, but by emptying your wants. Try this experiment for one day. Strip away one. Should desire the coffee you don't really need, the upgrade that's still functional. Notice the space that opens up when you stop chasing shadows. The discipline of desire isn't about living like Diogenes in a barrel unless you want to. It's about recognizing that every "I'll be happy when" is a trap. Happiness isn't a destination, it's the way you travel. So ask yourself, what's one desire I could release today, not to shrink your life, but to expand your freedom? Because the fewer things you need to be happy, the happier you'll find you already are. Death sits at every banquet, whispered the ancient Romans, not as a morbid obsession, but as a wake-up call carved in marble. Memento Mori, the practice of remembering mortality, wasn't about fear. It was Stoicism's most shocking tool for electrifying how we live. Seneca, who faced his own death by Nero's command, wrote, "You act like mortals in all you fear and like immortals in all you desire." He wasn't scolding, he was handing us a scalpel to dissect our excuses. Imagine waking each morning not with dread, but with the crisp clarity that today could be your masterpiece. That's the alchemy of Memento Mori, turning the weight of finitude into wings. The Romans embedded this in daily life. Generals celebrating triumphs had slaves whisper, "Remember, you must die," in their ears as crowds cheered. At feasts, a skeleton might be passed around as a wine companion. Macabre, only if you miss the point. These rituals weren't about despair, they were urgency engines. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think," he wasn't advocating paralysis, he was hacking our tendency to postpone meaning. Think of a sand timer. The grains falling aren't a threat, they're a rhythm for action. Here's the modern twist. We've replaced skeletons with smartphones, drowning Memento Mori in endless scrolling. But the Stoic question remains razor sharp. If this were your last year, what distractions would you drop? Not in some distant future, now. Would you waste hours arguing online or kneel to build a fort with your kids? Cling to resentment or tell someone, "I love you," like it's your last chance. Death awareness doesn't shrink life, it sharpens it. The musician Nick Cave calls this the great clarifying force. After losing his son, he described grief not as a void but as a lens. It makes the world more present, not less. So try this Stoic exercise. Tonight, as you turn off the lights, ask yourself, did I live today as if it mattered? Not perfectly, but authentically. Did I create something, forgive something, taste something fully? The Stoics didn't want us to dwell on death, they wanted us to defang it. When you stop pretending you have unlimited tomorrows, today becomes unbearably bright. That's the secret. Mortality isn't life's enemy, it's the compass. There's a reason Epictetus compared anger to a pot boiling over. It's not the flame beneath that's the problem, but how long you leave it unattended. He wrote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." That pause, the split second between what happens and how you react, is where emotional autonomy is won or lost. Imagine your coworker sends a terse email criticizing your project. Your fingers fly to the keyboard, fury fueling every keystroke. But what if, instead of hitting send, you stepped back? That space between the trigger and your response is like a hidden doorway to self-mastery. Modern mindfulness calls this the gap, but the Stoics were mapping it out centuries ago. Think of it as emotional jiu-jitsu, using the momentum of a situation against itself. When a driver cuts you off, your body stiffens, your pulse races, that's biology. But cursing or tailgating, that's a choice. Seneca described anger as brief insanity, and neuroscience backs him up. The amygdala hijacks rational thought for milliseconds during high emotion. The magic happens when you stretch those milliseconds into seconds, like a musician letting a note hang in the air before resolving it. That pause lets you compose your response instead of regurgitating your reflexes. Here's a workplace test. Next time an email sets your teeth on edge, open a blank document instead of hitting reply. Type your raw reaction, every sarcastic jab, every defensive rant, then delete it. Wait 10 minutes, now rewrite it with one change. Focus only on the actionable issue, not the emotion. I appreciate your feedback. Can we clarify which metrics need adjustment? Transforms conflict into collaboration. This isn't about swallowing your feelings, it's about serving them on your terms. Epictetus' boiling pot metaphor isn't about turning off the heat entirely. It's about lifting the lid before the steam scalds someone. Try this challenge for one day. Wear a rubber band around your wrist. Every time you feel triggered, a rude comment, a spilled coffee, snap it lightly. That tiny sting is your cue to pause and ask, does this demand a reaction or can I choose my response? The Stoics knew something we often forget: silence isn't weakness. It's the quietest form of power, because in that space between what happens and what you do next, you're not just controlling your emotions, you're reclaiming your freedom. Have you ever felt like an island disconnected, adrift in a world that seems indifferent to your struggles? The Stoics offered a radical remedy for this modern loneliness, one that stretched beyond philosophy and into the fabric of the universe itself. They called it sympatheia, the profound interconnectedness of all things. Picture a vast web where every tremor in one thread reverberates through the whole. Marcus Aurelius described it like this: what's bad for the hive is bad for the bee. To the Stoics, this wasn't poetic metaphor, it was physics. They believed the cosmos pulsed with logos, a universal reason binding everything from stars to souls. When you feel isolated, they'd say you've forgotten your place in this grand tapestry, not as a spectator, but as a vital thread. Think of an ancient olive tree, its gnarled trunk splitting into countless branches. Marcus wrote, meditate often on the interconnectedness of all things. Everything is interwoven like a net. That stranger who cut you off in traffic, a branch of your same tree, the coworker who undermines you, rooted in the same soil. This perspective doesn't erase conflict, it reframes it. When you argue with a sibling, you're not just clashing with another person, you're a limb of the same body fighting itself. The Stoics asked, would your hand attack your own foot? Yet we do this daily in subtler ways through resentment, competition, or indifference. Today, science echoes this ancient insight. Ecologists speak of ecosystems where every species, from the mightiest oak to the tiniest fungus, plays a role in the health of the whole. Climate change has made sympatheia urgent. A factory's smoke in one continent melts glaciers in another. But the Stoics took it further. They applied this to human relationships. Imagine facing a conflict with someone and pausing to ask, how are we branches of the same tree? Not to excuse harm, but to seek solutions that heal rather than sever. Here's a challenge. Next time loneliness or resentment creeps in, try this exercise. Look at your hand. Trace the veins beneath your skin, the same iron in your blood once burned in dying stars. The air in your lungs has been exhaled by generations before you. Suddenly, that stranger at the grocery store shares atoms with your own heartbeat. This isn't mystical thinking, it's atomic fact. Sympatheia dissolves the illusion of separation, replacing it with what the poet John Donne called no man an island. The Stoics would add, to harm another is to poison your own roots, to lift them, to rise together. Imagine a blacksmith plunging a blade into fire, not to destroy it, but to temper it stronger than before. That's the essence of Stoicism's most defiant idea. Obstacles aren't roadblocks, they're raw material. Long before Nassim Taleb coined the term antifragile, Marcus Aurelius declared, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This wasn't just optimism, it was alchemy. Take Demosthenes, the ancient Greek orator whose severe stutter should have ended his career. Instead of surrendering, he filled his mouth with pebbles and practiced shouting over the roar of the Aegean Sea. His weakness became his weapon. Those same speeches are still studied 24 centuries later. Now fast forward to modern challenges. A rejected manuscript isn't just a no, it's a chance to refine your voice. A failed product launch reveals market gaps you'd otherwise miss. Even burnout, that modern plague, can be a forced reset pointing you toward work that truly energizes you. The Stoics called this turning the obstacle upside down. It's not about denying pain, it's about refusing to let pain dictate your trajectory. Think of a river blocked by boulders. It doesn't stop. It finds new channels, carves deeper canyons, becomes more powerful precisely because of the barriers. Consider James Stockdale, the Navy pilot shot down over Vietnam and held as a POW for 7 years. tortured routinely, he credited Epictetus' teachings for his survival. You must never confuse the fact of being imprisoned with the definition of who you are. His cell didn't shrink his mind, it expanded his resilience. Post-release, he became a philosopher himself, proving that even hell can be repurposed into a classroom. So here's your challenge. Identify one current obstacle, a skill gap, a financial strain, a strained relationship, and ask, how could this be the exact friction I need to grow? Maybe the unfair criticism exposes a blind spot. The delayed dream forces you to build a sturdier foundation. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they reverse engineered it. Your obstacles aren't stopping you, they're shaping you. The question isn't whether you'll face resistance, but what masterpiece you'll forge from it. You've probably heard some version of this modern mantra. If you can dream it, you can achieve it. It sounds empowering until life throws a pandemic, a layoff, or an injury into your carefully laid plans. That's where the Stoics introduced a liberating twist, the reserve clause, a simple two-word addition that changes everything, fate permitting. Seneca illustrated this with a sailor's wisdom. The captain sets the course, but the storm may have other plans. You can prepare the ship, chart the route, and muster the crew, but winds and waves hold veto power. This isn't pessimism, it's the antidote to the exhaustion of pretending we control the uncontrollable. Modern hustle culture often conflates effort with entitlement. Work hard enough and success is guaranteed. But Seneca would call that magical thinking. He wrote, "Nothing happens to the wise man contrary to his expectation." Not because he predicts the future, but because he expects the unexpected. Imagine two entrepreneurs launching startups. One obsesses over a 5-year plan etched in stone, while the other writes goals with a pencil firm in intention but ready to erase and redraw as needed. When a supply chain crisis hits, the first founder rages against the unfairness. The second pivots to local suppliers, discovering a niche they'd overlooked. Both worked hard, but only one understood the reserve clause. Here's where it diverges from toxic positivity. Good vibes only. Cultures shame people for acknowledging setbacks, as if admitting obstacles invites them. The Stoics did the opposite. They named the storm upfront, not to invite fear, but to build a sturdier ship. Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome during plagues and wars, yet his journal entries start with, "if the gods will it." Before outlining his duties, that tiny phrase held space for reality without surrendering agency. Apply this to your own goals, that promotion you're chasing. Write it down, then add, "fate permitting." Does it feel defeating? That's the point. The discomfort reveals where you've tied your worth to an outcome you can't fully control. The reserve clause isn't about lowering ambition, it's about elevating adaptability. A farmer plants seeds with hope, but she doesn't curse the sky when rain refuses to fall, she irrigates. So ask yourself, where am I confusing effort with entitlement? Are you rigidly attached to a specific result, or open to the 1,000 other forms success might take? The Stoics' genius was recognizing that fate permitting isn't a disclaimer, it's the fine print where resilience is born. Add it to your plans and watch how it transforms frustration into curiosity and rigidity into creative grit. Imagine waking up on a freezing morning and choosing the coldest shower possible, not because the hot water's broken, but because you want to. That's the essence of voluntary discomfort, Stoicism's most counterintuitive superpower. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they invited it, like emotional athletes training for life's inevitable storms. Cato the Younger, the Roman senator famous for his unshakable integrity, took this to extremes. While his peers draped themselves in fine purple robes, he wore a simple, threadbare cloak even in winter. He slept on the ground when beds were available, ate plain food when feasts were offered. Was this performative austerity? Far from it. Cato called these acts preparedness drills. By regularly stepping into discomfort, he immunized himself against the shock of sudden loss or adversity. Epictetus, who trained his students like a philosopher coach, put it bluntly, "If you want to be strong, live as the weak do before weakness is forced upon you." Think of it like a firefighter running into burning buildings, not when the alarm sounds, but during practice, the modern equivalent comfort challenges. Sleeping on the floor once a month, taking a day without screens, walking in the rain without an umbrella, these aren't masochistic experiments, they're mental armor. Every voluntary discomfort is a whisper to your subconscious, "I choose this so I can handle what I don't." Consider the irony. We spend fortunes on ergonomic chairs, climate-controlled homes, and instant deliveries. Yet the more cushioned our lives become, the more brittle our resilience. A study on Navy SEAL training found that candidates who'd intentionally exposed themselves to cold, fatigue, or stress beforehand outperformed peers who'd trained in ideal conditions. The Stoics knew this 2 millennia ago. Seneca, despite his wealth, practiced poverty regularly, set aside days to eat only bread, sleep on a thin mat, wear your worst clothes. Then you'll understand the things you feared losing were never truly necessary for peace. Here's your challenge: pick one comfort to surrender this week. Ditch the snooze button and rise at dawn. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Sit with boredom for 10 minutes instead of grabbing your phone. The goal isn't suffering, it's waking up to your own strength. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Every cold shower, every missed convenience is a vote for that mastery. Start small, but start. Your future self, the one facing real storms, will thank you. Marcus Aurelius often imagined the mind as an impenetrable fortress, a place no outside force could breach without permission. He called this the inner citadel, writing, "You have a strong room within you where nothing can disturb you." Think of it like a medieval castle, high walls to keep out invaders, but also gardens and libraries inside, a sanctuary where you govern what enters and what stays beyond the gate. Today, we might call this psychological boundaries, but the Stoics framed it as something more profound, the art of making your peace untouchable. Consider how this plays out in the digital age. Social media floods our mental gates with opinions, comparisons, and outrage. Someone posts a snarky comment about your work, and suddenly, your inner fortress feels like it's under siege. But here's the Stoic twist: the breach isn't in the comment, it's in the gatekeeper. Epictetus put it bluntly, "If someone handed your body to a stranger, you'd be furious. Yet you hand your mind to anyone who insults you." Every time we let a tweet dictate our self-worth or a co-worker's tone ruin our afternoon, we've left the drawbridge down. Building your inner citadel starts with an audit of its vulnerabilities. Maybe it's the need for constant validation, refreshing likes like a slot machine. Or the habit of absorbing others' negativity until your own mood mirrors it. Marcus described these as gap in the walls, places where external chaos seeps in. Modern psychology agrees, boundary setting isn't about shutting people out, it's about deciding whose opinions get a seat at your table. Imagine your mind as a grand hall. You wouldn't let a heckler from the street march in and start shouting. Why grant that power to an anonymous online critic? Start with this challenge. For one day, track what weakens your inner walls. Does scrolling before bed invite anxiety? Does a particular person's criticism linger for hours? Write these down not to judge yourself, but to see where the fortress needs reinforcement. Then borrow a tactic from Seneca. Delay your response. When a barb lands, wait 5 minutes before engaging. Often, you'll find the urge to react has burned out. The goal isn't to become numb, but to build filters, letting in what serves you while keeping the rest at bay. Because the strongest citadels aren't made of stone, but of practiced discernment. And that's a skill no algorithm can override. Picture a glass of water sitting on a table. Is it half empty or half full? the Stoics would say it's simply half a glass, no more, no less. That's the essence of objective representation, the practice of stripping away the stories we layer onto events and seeing them as they truly are. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed adversity into wisdom, put it perfectly. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. A cancelled flight isn't inherently tragic, it's a scheduled change. The tragedy or opportunity is assigned by the mind. This mental shift is the difference between suffering an event and simply experiencing it. Consider two co-workers receiving the same critical feedback. One spirals into shame. "My boss hates me. I'm terrible at my job." The other passes the comments clinically. Section 3 needs revision. "I'll ask for clarification." Both heard identical words, but only one fell into what psychologists now call narrative hijacking, where our brains spin a tiny event into a saga of failure or victimhood. The Stoics called this the Discipline of Assent, pausing before we stamp an event with meaning. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, reminding himself, "Don't tell yourself anything more than what the initial impressions report." Not "this meeting is a disaster," but "3 people disagreed with my proposal. Now apply this to gossip. A friend mentioned someone mocked your outfit." The victim mentality latches onto the drama. "They're so cruel, everyone's judging me." Stoic realism. "One person made a comment, I like this outfit." The facts haven't changed, only the weight you've chosen to give them. Ancient Stoics visualized this as a painter's palette. Events are raw pigments, but we mix the colors into emotions. Anger isn't in the insult, it's in the brushstrokes we add after. Here's the challenge: pick one situation you're currently dramatizing. Maybe it's a friend's vague text, "They're ignoring me." Or a missed deadline, "I've ruined everything." Now write down the bare facts, no adjectives, no assumptions, just the what, not the why. You'll often find the story you've been torturing yourself with is a fiction you authored. As Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Clarity isn't cold, it's the ultimate act of self-defense. Because when you stop confusing events with interpretations, you reclaim the power to choose your response, and that's where true emotional autonomy begins. Long before bullet journals and productivity hacks, the Stoics built their entire philosophy on just 4 pillars, 4 virtues so timeless they still shape ethical frameworks today. Wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance weren't abstract ideals to them. They were daily emotional anchors. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, didn't mince words. Happiness is a good flow of life, and virtue is its mother. Think of these virtues as a compass for modern chaos, a way to navigate decisions not just logically, but morally. Take wisdom. Today, we might call it discernment, the ability to separate signal from noise in a world drowning in hot takes and clickbait. Marcus Aurelius showed this when he ignored palace gossip, writing, "The opinion of 10,000 men is worthless if none of them know anything about the subject." Wisdom isn't just knowing facts, it's recognizing when to pause before sharing that inflammatory headline or assuming you've got the full story. Then there's courage, not just physical bravery, but the grit to stand by your principles when it costs you something. Picture a junior employee noticing their company cutting corners on safety. Speaking up risks their job, staying silent risks lives. Ancient Stoics like Cato faced this daily. When Julius Caesar offered him power in exchange for compromising his values, Cato chose poverty and exile over bending. Modern courage might look different: whistleblowing, setting boundaries with toxic family, or even admitting fault. But the core remains, doing what's right because it's hard, not in spite of it. Justice to the Stoics wasn't just courtroom fairness, it was recognizing our interconnectedness. Epictetus framed it as giving each person their due, not just legally but in everyday kindness. Imagine your rival at work lands in hot water. Justice whispers, "Help, don't gloat." It's the barista comping a coffee for someone short on change, or the CEO ensuring janitors earn living wages. In an age of viral outrage, Stoic justice asks, are we attacking systems or scapegoating individuals? Temperance, the fourth virtue, is perhaps the most rebellious today. It's not about deprivation, but enoughness. Seneca mocked Rome's elite for gorging on delicacies only to vomit and feast again, a scene eerily mirrored in modern binge scrolling and consumerism. Temperance asks, does this nourish or numb me? Whether it's that third drink, impulsive purchase, or 11th hour on social media, here's how to activate these virtues. Next time you face a tough call, run it through all four. Considering a job switch, wisdom. Is this aligned with my long-term growth? Courage. Am I leaving for opportunity or fleeing discomfort? Justice. How does this impact others I care for? Temperance. Is this move rooted in aspiration or desperation? The Stoics didn't see virtues as checkboxes, but as a single golden thread. Pull one, and the whole fabric strengthens. Live by them, and you'll find something extraordinary. Your emotions stop being reactions and start becoming choices. Cicero once painted a vivid picture of a Stoic archer, a master bowman who draws his arrow with perfect form, aims with unwavering focus, and releases the string with flawless technique. His job, Cicero explained, isn't to hit the target, but to do everything in his power to ensure the shot is true. Why? Because once that arrow leaves the bow, wind, distance, or sheer luck could divert it. The archer controls his stance, his breathing, his release, not the outcome. This ancient analogy holds a mirror to our modern obsession with results. How often do we berate ourselves for missing targets that were never fully in our hands to begin with? Perfectionism twists this wisdom. It whispers that if you just obsess enough, hustle harder, or micromanage every detail, you can guarantee success. But the Stoic archer knows better. Imagine a parent agonizing over their child's grades, as if love alone could erase the unpredictability of exams or the child's own will. Or a novelist rewriting a single paragraph 50 times, convinced the perfect sentence will force the world to adore their work. The irony, this frantic grasping often weakens the shot. Tense fingers ruin an archer's aim, just as fear of failure strangles creativity. Seneca saw this clearly. Our plans miscarry because they have no aim. When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. Focus on the effort and the harbor finds you. Now apply this to your own life. That project you poured your soul into but critics dismissed, the relationship where you showed up fully, yet things still fell apart. The Stoic question isn't, did I succeed? But did I give it my honest shot? When Marcus Aurelius journaled at night, he didn't tally wins and losses. He asked, did I act with integrity today? Did I persist despite difficulty? Outcomes belong to fate, effort belongs to you. Here's the pivot, grab a pen and finish this sentence I've been judging myself unfairly for. Maybe it's a business metric that hinges on market volatility, or a child's choices that were never yours to make. The archer doesn't apologize for the wind. He plants his feet, draws again, and finds joy in the act itself. Your worth isn't etched in results, but in the quiet certainty that you aimed true. And sometimes that's the only target that ever mattered. Epictetus stood at the gates of his mind like a vigilant sentry, arms crossed, demanding one question of every thought that approached: where is your proof? This relentless scrutiny, what the Stoics called prosauch or attention training, wasn't about passive mindfulness. It was active gatekeeping. Long before apps hijacked our focus, Epictetus warned, the chief task in life is simply this: to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control and which have to do with the choices I actually control. Imagine your attention as a flashlight in a dark forest. Every time you impulsively check your phone or latch onto a worry, that beam darts wildly, illuminating nothing long enough to see clearly. Prosauch is the discipline of holding that beam steady on purpose, on priority. Modern life makes this feel impossible. Notifications aren't just interruptions, they're attention hijackers exploiting our brains' craving for novelty. A study from the University of California found it takes nearly 23 minutes to refocus after a single interruption. The Stoics anticipated this chaos. Epictetus' command to guard your impressions wasn't metaphorical, it was tactical. Every distraction, whether a colleague's drama or a viral outrage, is an impression knocking at the gates of your mind, demanding entry. Prosauch teaches you to pause and ask, does this deserve my limited attention? Before swiping open that email, before spiraling into hypothetical arguments, you become the bouncer of your own mental nightclub, turning away troublemakers at the door. Here's how to train this muscle in the digital age. Start with a phone-free morning ritual, not as self-help fluff, but as Stoic boot camp. For the first hour after waking, leave your device in another room. Use that time to choose your focus, journal like Marcus Aurelius, savor coffee without scrolling, or simply stare out the window. This isn't about productivity, it's about reclaiming sovereignty over your attention before the world starts bidding on it. The philosopher William James noted that the ability to voluntarily bring back a wandering attention is the root of judgment, character, and will. The Stoics would add, it's also the root of emotional autonomy. Every morning you resist the pull of the screen. You're not just avoiding distraction, you're rehearsing the art of guarding what matters. Try this challenge for 3 days. Extend the gap between waking and your first screen interaction by just 15 minutes. Notice how often your hand reflexively reaches for phantom notifications. That twitch isn't just habit, it's proof of how thoroughly external forces have colonized your attention. Prosauch isn't anti-technology, it's pro-choice. The question isn't, can I check my phone? But, do I want to? Because the mind you save from distraction isn't just your own. It's the last truly private territory in an age of endless invasion. Guard it like a Stoic on watch. Hierarchical, a lesser-known Stoic philosopher, left us one of history's most radical diagrams, a series of concentric circles like ripples in a pond. At the center, the self, the next ring, family, then friends, neighbors, fellow citizens, and finally, all humanity. His challenge wasn't just to acknowledge these circles, but to actively pull them inward, treating strangers as friends and foreigners as neighbors. He called this oikeiosis, the practice of making the unfamiliar familiar. In an age of social media, echo chambers, and political polarization, this ancient idea feels like a lightning bolt. What if the cure for modern tribalism isn't more division, but deliberate emotional expansion? Think of the last time you felt a surge of outrage at a headline. Now imagine discovering the subject of that headline was your sibling. Suddenly, the story shifts, nuance appears, empathy activates. That's hierarchical circles in action. The Stoics believed our natural state isn't us versus them, but we. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, wrote, "My city and country as Antoninus is Rome. As a human being, it's the world." He didn't just tolerate foreigners, he saw himself in them. Fast forward to today, when we reduce complex issues to team sports, left versus right, rural versus urban, we're not just fracturing society. We're shrinking our own emotional range. Pettiness thrives in small mental spaces. Cosmopolitanism, literally, citizen of the cosmos, was the Stoics' antidote to this shrinkage. Consider how this plays out in daily life. Road rage flares when we see another driver as that idiot instead of a tired parent rushing to daycare. Workplace tensions ease when we frame the difficult colleague as someone fighting invisible battles, not just an obstacle. The philosopher Martha Nussbaum modernized hierarchical circles with a haunting question. If we could press a button and eliminate all hunger in a distant country, but never meet the people we helped, would we still do it? True emotional autonomy means widening your circle until their suffering feels like yours, not out of guilt, but because their humanity is inseparable from your own. Here's the experiment. Pick someone you've mentally labeled other, a political opponent, a rival, even a celebrity you disdain. Spend one day imagining them in your innermost circle. What fears might drive them? What loves shape them? You don't have to agree with them to recognize their stake in the same world. The Stoics knew this wasn't just moral posturing, it was strategic self-interest. Every time you widen your circle, you disarm another potential source of resentment, and in that space, something extraordinary happens. You're no longer a prisoner of petty divisions. You become, as Seneca proclaimed, a citizen of the universe, not by birthright but by choice. Seneca's piercing words cut through centuries like a scalpel. Life is long if you know how to use it. At first glance, this seems contradictory. How could a man who died at 69 claim life wasn't short? But his essay on the shortness of life reveals the brutal math. Subtract the hours spent sleeping, worrying, chasing hollow pleasures, and bowing to others' demands, and what remains is a shockingly thin sliver of time. He wasn't measuring heartbeats, he was auditing attention. Picture your lifespan as a jar of marbles, each one representing a week. A 90-year life holds about 4,680 marbles. If you're 30, you've already spilled over 2,000 onto the floor. How many rolled away while you were stuck in traffic, scrolling mindlessly, or rehearsing grievances like broken records? Modern distractions make Seneca's warning even more urgent. The average person spends 11 years staring at screens, 4 years complaining, and a staggering 7 months deciding what to watch. Compare that to the mere 24 days the typical parent spends in meaningful conversation with their child by age 18. Time isn't stolen from us, we give it away, trading drops of life for distractions Seneca couldn't have imagined. He wrote, "People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful." The irony, we treat time like an infinite resource while clutching tightly to things that rust, break, or gather dust. Here's the Stoic refrain: procrastination isn't laziness, it's a denial of death. We postpone passions, assuming there'll always be a later, but mortality statistics paint a starker picture. If you live to 80, you'll have roughly 4,000 weekends. Half are already gone by age 40. The someday novel, the postponed reconciliation, the dream trip, each relies on a future that isn't promised. Seneca saw this clearly. We are not given a short life, but we make it short. His solution: audit your days like a ruthless accountant. Track how you spend your hours for 1 week, categorizing each block, creating, consuming, complaining, or connecting. The results often reveal a tragic mismatch between our values and our calendar. The Stoic challenge isn't about morbid fixation on death, it's about vitality. Ask yourself, what deferred dream would I prioritize if I learned I had 1 year left, not as a hypothetical but with visceral urgency? The artist's studio gathering dust, the estranged friend you keep meaning to call, the language you've always wanted to learn, these aren't indulgent one-days. They're the marrow of a life fully lived. Seneca's genius was recognizing that time is the only currency that can't be earned back. Every morning, the universe hands you 24 fresh hours. The question isn't whether life is short, it's whether you'll spend it building sandcastles or carving mountains. What if everything we've been taught about happiness is backwards? The ancient Stoics offered a revolutionary alternative to chasing fleeting pleasures. They called it Eudaimonia, a Greek term meaning human flourishing. Unlike the modern obsession with comfort and constant stimulation, Eudaimonia wasn't about feeling good, it was about being good. Picture two farmers, one obsessively chasing rainbows, convinced the next pot of gold will finally satisfy him, while the other tends his fields with deep focus, finding meaning in the work itself. The first is trapped on the hedonic treadmill, always moving, never arriving. The second, he's discovered the Stoic secret. Happiness isn't a destination, it's the alignment between your actions and your highest nature. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, put it bluntly: hard work is the only path to true joy. At first glance, that sounds absurd. Who associates back-breaking labor with happiness? But Rufus wasn't glorifying suffering. He was highlighting a profound truth. There's a unique satisfaction in doing hard things well, in pushing your limits not for applause but for the quiet pride of meeting your own standards. Compare this to the dopamine hits of modern life, the empty calories of binge watching, impulsive shopping, or endless scrolling. Those thrills evaporate like morning dew, leaving us thirstier than before. Eudaimonia, by contrast, is the deep well that never runs dry. The hedonic treadmill is a cruel illusion. You grind for the promotion, imagining it'll bring peace, only to find yourself immediately fixated on the next rung. You buy the luxury car, and within months, it's just another commute. Neuroscience confirms this. Our brains adapt to new pleasures, resetting our happiness baseline. The Stoics saw this coming 2,000 years ago. Seneca warned, "It's not that we have little, it's that we crave so much." Eudaimonia flips the script. Instead of asking, "How can I feel better?" it asks, "How can I live better?" Imagine applying this to your own life with a virtue audit. Grab a notebook and review last week's choices through a Stoic lens. Did you choose convenience over integrity, comfort over growth? For example, that time you bit your tongue instead of respectfully disagreeing, was that patience or cowardice? The extra hour spent perfecting a project no one would notice, was that excellence or perfectionism? The Stoics weren't keeping score, they were tuning their moral compass. Marcus Aurelius did this daily, writing, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. Here's the challenge: for the next 7 days, end each evening by noting one moment you aligned with virtue, not just what you did but why." Maybe you listened fully instead of waiting to speak, not to be polite but to truly understand. Or you tackled a difficult task without complaint, not for recognition but to strengthen your discipline. Eudaimonia thrives in these microscopic choices. Over time, they compound not into a life free of pain, but one rich with purpose, because happiness isn't something you find. It's something you build, one virtuous brick at a time. Picture the Stoic sage, that mythical figure of perfect wisdom, unshakable virtue, and divine tranquility. It's easy to feel dwarfed by this ideal, as if Stoicism demands you become some marble statue of unattainable perfection. But here's the liberating truth the ancient Stoics understood: the sage isn't a finish line, it's a horizon. Chrysippus, one of Stoicism's founding thinkers, likened wisdom to walking toward a distant mountain. You'll never actually reach the mountain. The closer you get, the more you realize how far you still have to go. But each step makes the path clearer, the air crisper, and your stride stronger. That's the heart of progressive perfectionism, not being flawless but being faithful to the climb. Consider how this plays out in modern life. You lose your temper with a loved one and the inner critic hisses. A true Stoic would never snap like that. But Epictetus, who trained students for decades, would disagree. He famously said even Socrates wasn't perfectly sage-like. He just practiced wisdom more consistently than others. The goal isn't to never stumble, it's to stumble forward, learning from each misstep. Imagine two musicians. One obsesses over playing every note perfectly, freezing at every mistake, while the other embraces errors as part of the symphony's rhythm. The second improves faster, not because they're flawless, but because they're engaged. That's Stoic progress, showing up again and again for the work of becoming. So what's one sage-like quality you could cultivate today? Maybe it's equanimity, responding to delays with patience rather than frustration, or discernment, pausing before sharing that inflammatory headline to ask, is this true? Is this necessary? The Stoics didn't expect you to embody all virtues at once. Seneca wrote, Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour. Your bricks might look small, biting back a complaint, choosing integrity over convenience, or sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it. Here's the invitation. Pick one moment today to act as if you were the sage. Not to pretend you've arrived, but to stretch toward your next iteration of wisdom. When the urge to gossip arises, let it pass like a cloud. When plans crumble, ask, what's here to learn? The sage isn't a standard to shame you. It's a compass pointing toward your own potential. And the miracle, with each choice, the horizon shifts. The mountain stays distant, but the view gets sweeter. There's a brutal elegance in how the Stoics handled insults, not by firing back, but by refusing to engage at all. When a heckler shouted at Cato the Younger in the Roman Senate, calling him drunk and corrupt, the room braced for an explosion. Instead, Cato smirked and walked away, leaving his enemy fuming in the echo of his own words. That silence wasn't weakness, it was a calculated strike. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming philosophy's sharpest mind, put it bluntly, if someone speaks badly of you, defend yourself only by silence. The oak tree doesn't argue with the storm, it grows roots deeper. Fast forward to today's digital Colosseum, where every tweet, comment, or post is a chance to duel. Someone misrepresents your point, you must correct them. A stranger insults your taste, fire back with wit. But here's the paradox, the more you engage, the smaller you become. Imagine pouring your energy into debating a troll whose sole purpose is to derail you. Every reply is a brick in their fortress of distraction. Now picture Marcus Aurelius, journaling privately instead of publishing rebuttals to his critics. His silence wasn't passive, it was power hoarded for battles that actually mattered. This plays out in workplaces too. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. The room waits for your outburst. Instead, you say nothing, then later, in private, deliver documentation to your boss with surgical precision. The Stoics called this strategic restraint. Your silence amplifies their bluster, like holding up a mirror to their insecurity. Online, this means resisting the urge to win arguments with strangers. As Seneca observed, the more you throw dirt, the more you lose ground. Think of a time silence served you. Maybe it was biting your tongue during a family argument, only to have the other person reflect and apologize later. Or that email chain where your refusal to escalate forced the aggressor to reveal their pettiness to the entire team. Silence isn't empty, it's a canvas where others paint their true colors. So here's the challenge. Next time you're baited, pause. Let the insult hang in the air like smoke. Watch how quickly the fire dies when you stop feeding it oxygen. Because mastery over words begins with mastery over silence, and in a world addicted to noise, that's the ultimate rebellion. After 2,000 years, Stoicism endures not because it's ancient, but because it's alive, a toolkit for reclaiming your inner freedom in a chaotic world. These 22 lessons distill down to 3 unshakable pillars, each one a stepping stone to emotional autonomy. First, acceptance, not the resignation of giving up, but the clarity of discerning what's yours to change and what's life's to give. Like Seneca weathering exile or Epictetus thriving after slavery, acceptance isn't about liking reality, it's about meeting it where it stands so you can move forward unburdened. Second, perspective. Whether it's Marcus Aurelius' view from above or Hierarchical's widening circles, Stoicism trains us to zoom out until petty grievances shrink and true priorities sharpen. That rude comment from the orbit of the moon, it's a whisper lost in time. And third, action. Not frantic busy work, but deliberate momentum. turning obstacles into fuel like James Stockdale in his prison cell, or choosing silence over senseless battles like Cotto in the Senate. These three: acceptance, perspective, action aren't separate tools. They're a single trinity, each one reinforcing the others. Seneca's piercing words echo across the centuries. Life is long if you know how to use it. The irony: emotional autonomy doesn't add hours to your day, it multiplies the meaning within them. Every moment spent resisting the unchangeable is a theft from your potential. Every grievance nursed is a withdrawal from your peace. But here's the good news: you don't need to master all 22 lessons today. Start with one. Maybe it's the dichotomy of control, scribbling those 2 columns to reclaim focus. Or Premeditatio Malorum, mentally rehearsing a fear until it loses its fangs. Even something as simple as pausing before reacting to a text, letting the space between trigger and response widen just enough for choice to enter. As you close this video, ask yourself, which principle lit a spark? Was it Epictetus' boiling pot of anger or Marcus' inner citadel? Share it below, not as a performance but as an invitation. Because Stoicism was never meant to be pondered in isolation. It thrives in the friction of shared practice. The same web that connects us in sympathia can lift us as we climb. So take one step, then another, and remember, the longest journey begins not with a leap but with the decision to lace up your boots. The rest, that's yours.